Would you like to reach our film and TV review podcast audience? Do you have a product or service of interest to film and TV home consumers or followers of the entertainment industry? Have a film or show production to publicize? For affordable price plans for all budgets, get in touch and find out about our introductory advertising options. Reach our audience of film and TV viewers and visit our site contact page at filmandtvreview.com, or you can email us at business@filmandtvreview.com. Reach out today. Welcome to filmandtvreview.com. Catch the latest film, TV and streamed show reviews every week. The views and opinions expressed by the authors and those providing comments are theirs alone. They do not reflect the views, opinions or position of filmandtvreview.com or their respective parent companies or affiliates. Filmandtvreview.com makes no representations as to accuracy, completeness, correctness, suitability, or validity of any information in this program and is for entertainment purposes only. Episodes may contain adult humor and language. For full terms and conditions, see filmandtvreview.com.
Today is about obviously musical biopics in film and television, and Richard and Mark will be your co-host.
But I told you Jason, that this is a topic that will create conversations. That's for sure.
Or arguments. Go Susan. What did you want to say?
Okay, hi guys. Well, hello.
Hi, Susan. Hi.
Yeah, so the first one was Love and Mercy. It's the biopic of the Beach Boys. So we got Paul Dano back in the 60s. You got John Cusack as the slightly traumatized, disheveled, late Brian Wilson. It starts off in a car showroom, and he forms a relationship with his then-to-be girlfriend. He's actually quite a mentor throughout it. We kind of do some flashbacks and understand what's gone on with the Beach Boys and Brian Wilson, who some of you, probably a lot of you will know, is the driving force behind the Beach Boys and the writing. And this joins him at this stage where he's wanting to create Pet Sounds, so, the sort of seminal album, a little bit with that wall of sound, that kind of Phil Spector type feel. And the Beach Boys are kind of like, hey, what's wrong with the rest of our sound? We're the Californian sound, what's the matter with that? So on this album is God Only Knows What I'd Be Without You. And obviously, the rest is history. So everyone kind of knows his tracks and everything. But yeah, it's kind of like, it's the kind of descent. We start to understand about his life. He starts to descend into a bit of a drug haze because he just feels misunderstood and just sort of can't get that creative talent across. So yeah, I really liked it. I thought Paul Dano and John Cusack are very different actors and physically sort of quite different. It's not like casting is like, oh wow, look, he looks so much like Brian Wilson. But you do go with it because it's a good story. And I liked it as a biopic. And then you also get bits at the end, which is always good to sort of validate it, to say, yeah, this did happen and this is what happened to Brian Wilson and he's still doing this and he's done that. And so it wasn't like sometimes you get this kind of based on true story, and then you wonder how far they go a bit off piste, then you can go back on Wikipedia, can't you, and check out the facts and see what happened. But yeah, this was quite faithful, quite good acting. And I liked it. So the second one was What's Love Got to Do with It? Story of Tina Turner and Ike Turner. And so you've got Lawrence Fishburne, most memorable for people, I suppose, in The Matrix. But he's always quality. He's always good value. I love him. And Angela Bassett as Tina Turner. Full on, not challenging in a sense, because obviously it's quite, full on some of the scenes, and obviously he does sort of violate her and what have you and stuff within the marriage and things. So it's difficult, but you see her sort of coming through the other end. And, if you know the story, it's pretty faithful to what happened in real life. So you sort of know that there's a silver line and she goes completely different area. There's a lot of kindness along the way that people kind of help her out where it could have got a little bit difficult for her. So yeah, I really like that. I like those two films as well. And also Jason mentioned as well about The Doors. And it really sucks you in, that film, because it's very trippy at times, isn't it? It's well done. And Val Kilmer.
I'll just mention that before I go, because I'm not going to say about a period. But The Doors, definitely Oliver Stone's 1991. And Val Kilmer in the title role. He's definitely, you'd almost say, not acting, he's almost channeling Jim Morrison, but it's just so uncanny. But it's a very good, just more of these, typical of these biopics, of the very fast rise and fall of singers and bands and the pressures that they come under, and because they're kind of artists in nature, but some of them have a bit more of a fragile psyche. But it's kind of like it's almost exciting to watch their rise, but then when you see their fall, it's like for this, for that. But it's again, Val Kilmer, great performance, and I think Carl McLachlan as Ray Manzuk, I can't pronounce it properly, but a great band of the 60s, and definitely made that sound and very much counter culture and kind of sound of a generation at that point. But just kind of like almost like watching a roller coaster or a car crash, almost kind of like in slow motion. But it's great, and it's Oliver Stone, so you can always expect kind of interesting movie coming out from him.
I think that's it. I mean, I think I can see James's hand, so maybe hand over to him for his.
I think James has hundreds of recommendations.
So I finally got around to watching What's Love Got to Do With It after like 28 years. It's always been on my to-watch list. And it's quite, before streaming, it's quite difficult to get hold of. It was never released on Blu-ray and stuff. And obviously it's got an 18 certificate, which it still feels like it earns. It's like the scenes of domestic violence in it are really tough to watch. And I don't know if they do that now. I think there'd be pressure from the studios to say, we want this to be accessible to everybody. You know, it's a Tina Turner biopic. We want everybody to come, so we don't want like a real hard R rating on it. Angela Bassett is fantastic in this. I think her and Lawrence Fishburne both got Oscar nominations for it, and deservedly so. There's a really great start scene where you see her as a child at church, and she's thrown out of church because she's ad-libbing to all the hymns and stuff, and I think that's just like a really nice introduction to her as a character, and then it goes through that. The one thing I really struggle with in biopics is when they're miming. I know that Tina Turner's got a very unique voice, but every time Angela Bassett opens her mouth and it's Tina Turner's voice, I really struggle to get past that. It sort of throws me out of the film briefly. And there's lots of films where they don't mime. Obviously, Rocketman, Notorious, Walk the Line, Respect, and In Control. Actually, all the members that play the band Joy Division actually learned how to play the instrument, so all the instrumentation is live as well. I noticed on What's Love Got to Do With It that all the songs are credited to Tina Turner and Lawrence Fishburne. I was really surprised by how well it holds up for a film that's 28 years old.
I don't really do musicals at all, but the only three that I've seen in my life I absolutely loved. One of them is called Backbeat, the original story of Stuart Whitcliffe. I can never remember his name. He was like the original bass of the Beatles. And really, you know, one of those films you see as a kid, you think it's going to be cool because it's about the Beatles. And I was a kid, and then when I watched it, I didn't actually get what the film was about. But of course, obviously, as a kid, you don't know. You're like, yeah, I'll watch this movie. It's about the Beatles. And you watch it, and it affected me so much. Like one of those films that I probably shouldn't have watched until I was 18. And brilliant movie. Absolutely brilliant. Lifelong fan of the Beatles now, just because of that movie. And what was the one about Freddie Mercury?
Oh, Bohemian Rhapsody.
Yeah.
Bohemian Rhapsody, absolutely amazing. Ever since I was a kid, I've been a fan of Queen. My mum was like, I think it was the only thing she passed on to me. But yeah, this like love for Queen, and I didn't really care which bits weren't entirely like along the lines. The fact is, you love the movie. I love the movie. I love the characters. And if you educated one or two people to that person's life and his story and the struggles, then really good.
In the end, it's not a documentary. I mean, every time it says at the end, based on the life or based on the book of, but So I'm not sure actually, but being accurate is the ultimate goal. In the end, it's just to have a good entertainment movie. You know, that's what it is. I think.
I think there is an element that you want the truth to be told about a person, whether there's good bits or bad bits. That's fair enough. So, like, there is that aspect of like when something was in a movie that isn't entirely true, or they portrayed this event as an event and it was actually just like a thing that happened. Then you kind of do get a little bit like, well, but like I said,
it can be
really good movie.
The point of view of the screenwriter, of the director, and you just accept it. It's just a point of view in the end. It's art, you know. James, you want to say something?
I think Rocketman is probably one of the best biopics, and I was really surprised by it. It really depicts well, I think, the struggle of someone being thrown into something that they feel out of their depth. So he wants to be a musician. He wants to play music. What he's not prepared for is the fame and everything that comes with that. And that sounds like a sort of cliched story. Maybe it is in a way, but I think the way it's depicted in this, that he's from a working class background, and he's pushed into this world that it just feels really terrifying to him. And I think it's really good. I really love the sort of framing device of the film as well, that it's basically him telling his story from Alcohol Anonymous or Drugs Anonymous counselling, and he sort of goes in this outfit and tells that, because it allows you to jump around the timeline a little bit. With Bohemian Rhapsody, I mean, I'm with Cody that I was a massive Queen fan growing up, and there's a really good documentary actually called Days of Our Lives. Pre-COVID, I had a Limitless card, so I used to go in and see films multiple times. And I really enjoyed Bohemian Rhapsody the first time. And then the second time I was sat there watching it, and I was getting annoyed as a fan, as all the little details that were wrong at the start. And then at the point when Mike Myers turns up playing a character that isn't even real, I went, actually, let it go, James. Don't worry about it. Just get into the film. You know, just enjoy the film and the music and the story. But yeah, watching the film, I mean, the thing about Queen in a way is their story isn't that interesting. Like, a lot of the story is just they did really well. And that isn't a sort of underdog story. It's got no interest. So I do actually think with Bohemian Rhapsody, there are issues with that film. But I think the structure that they come up with actually makes for a more entertaining film. The information is out there if you want to go and find it, about what actually happened in what order. But when they juggle things around to make it a more compelling story, I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. It's just a very, very enjoyable biopic. Yeah, I will say that I often don't really believe what I'm seeing on screen. So I kind of feel like I'm watching maybe almost like if Kevin Feige did a Queen film and just went, here's the source material, here's the source material, just try and do the best you can with it and make it so that it's structured like a proper film, a blockbuster film. And it does that very well. Sometimes the cast as well, they're really good. The guy who plays the bassist, John Deacon, is actually the kid from Jurassic Park, isn't he?
Yes,
grown up.
Yeah.
But sometimes I feel like they've gone for people who look so much like the characters that it's almost like you didn't need to do that and like dress them up, because it looks a bit like cosplay. But yeah, it's a good fun film. I think the only thing that people drew some issue with is the fact that they moved Freddie Mercury's AIDS diagnosis and sort of changed that thing. But the other thing with these films is this is an official film, so this is signed off by the band. And I think this is the problem that you get with some biopics, is where they feel sanitized is because they've got to do that to get the rights to the movie. There is actually a Bowie biopic that was terrible by all accounts, and there's no Bowie music in it because they couldn't get the rights to it. And it's sort of like, well, nobody really wants to go and see that, do they, if there's none of the songs in it? So they do have to make these concessions to and that means you get a slightly more sanitized film sometimes.
Just to follow up what you said, James, actually, I'm a big Queen fan. Again, like everybody is a Queen fan, but it's true. I've been raised listening to Queen all the time. I kind of didn't like this movie, to be honest, surprisingly, because there are a few things. What you said, actually, I was thinking the same thing while watching it. The story itself is boring, in a way. It's just actually because first of all, we know that actually they are one of the greatest rock band of all time, etc. This movie was made, in my opinion, for people like me who love to hear the songs of Queen. And now when I watched the movie, I watched it only once in movie theater, people were almost standing up inside movie theater, dancing and singing, which is
people
fine.
Were clapping when I saw it. Yeah,
it's a great experience. It's a very great like community almost, and you share like a mini concert inside the cinema. But as the movie itself, I was not really convinced.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
You see what I mean? Because there is no stakes in it. That's the expression. And
I think the thing with Freddie Mercury that's really interesting. So he was raised in Zanzibar.
Yeah.
And become an immigrant and come into the UK and then become a British citizen, and that seems like a really interesting thing to explore.
Obviously, that's just before through the father for 5 minutes, and that's it. The immigration part is just 5 minutes. In my opinion, that's something that I always thought. An actor or an actress who is only portraying a musical legend, let's say, on screen, for me, this is not challenging. It is a good job, obviously, but they don't create anything. It's just mimicking, in my opinion. They're not the only thing that they do in that case. I take an example. There's a French actress that everybody knows called Marion Cotillard. The only Oscar that she ever won was for a movie about Edith Piaf. In France, it's like she did an amazing job because she was Edith Piaf. And I was thinking, but what she must have done is watch hours and hours of Edith Piaf footage and try to do exactly the same. For me, this is not how I see it, not how I see acting. But that's what
I heard someone sort of talk about the Oscars one year and say that there seems to be a theme actually with the Best Actor and Best Actress nominations, that it's often given to someone who's depicting someone else. They said it's almost like the Oscars can't understand a good performance unless they've got something to compare it to. So it's almost like they see the real person and then go, oh yeah, and they look a bit like that person, so we give them the actor rather than like an original performance. But they're both valid. But yeah, there does seem to be a bit of a bias maybe towards those roles.
It's a personal opinion, but let's try to chat with someone else. Amy, you want to give us a recommendation?
Well, I agree with a lot of stuff that was said about Bohemian Rhapsody. I think everyone knows by now how much I love that film. I agree with Jean about how Rami, I think he really does embody Freddie Mercury, and whether he looks like him or not, I think he definitely did the homework, and he definitely, took it upon himself to do so much research to the point of, I think he actually kind of looked at Freddie Mercury's own heroes like Jimi Hendrix and Liza Minnelli and saw how they moved to interpret how Freddie would go on to move because of the things that he was seeing. So I agree there. I also agree that, yes, it probably should have been more of like called Mercury or something rather than Bohemian Rhapsody and focusing on, Queen, because
Mercury is a good name, actually.
Because Bohemian Rhapsody is just like, what's the most famous song we've got? Let's just call it that.
I think that's kind of why, because so many people say, oh, what was that Freddie Mercury film called? Because you do think it's going to be like something to do with him rather than the band itself. Other than that, I looked at people's recommendations and Walk the Line came up a lot. And I think because, again, I love Bo Rap so much, I kind of looked at it through the lens of that, but I think I really enjoyed it equally as much in different ways. And I was so surprised that Joaquin actually was singing. I did not realise that that was him.
As was Reese Witherspoon as well. I think she got an Oscar for that,
Yeah, I was so surprised by that. I thought,
he's actually got like, if you look on his Wikipedia, he's got like a history of it. He did like singing as a kid and stuff. He's actually got a really good voice.
Yeah, he had to have had either adequate training for that or a history in it to do that. Yeah, I thought it was brilliant and surprised that, I suppose you can tell that it might have been a bit of an older one because it was kind of more true to what was going on and more before like Hollywood, looked at, oh wow, biopics are doing really well, let's go down that route.
Like you said, you can never be like completely carbon copy unless you've had a voice transplant, but they're pretty close, aren't they, to like the originals plus their own sort of uniqueness as well. But yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and I enjoyed...
You got to think about the actor as well, the Phoenix. Like he did 3 roles within the same period of time within that 4 years, and went from like normal average weight for his size to like overweight as cash. And then the other movie he did was like he lost 6 stone, like absolutely skinny, like almost on death's door. Like talk about like endurance and dedication to a part.
Method.
Like he actually put on like 4 stone to be cash, didn't he?
I did check out Rocketman, and this is going to be completely unpopular. I didn't really like it that much. I know. I think his portrayal was amazing. I think it's just because I don't have too much of a connection with Elton John, and I also found the musical aspect just a little too much. Like I just kind of wanted them to stop singing and just tell the story.
What else was I'm more interested in because obviously it was a really good movie and it was about a character I really like. So for you to come out and be like, I didn't really like it, I'm more interested in to like give me more aspects of the things you didn't like about it.
Cody won't let you off the chat.
Good
luck, Amy.
Cody's
Good
like,
luck, Amy.
explain yourself.
I don't mean it like that, honestly.
We're joking, Cody, we're joking.
Yeah, I just think that I didn't understand the kind of timeline of it. It wasn't completely clear to me, and the fact that, you know, the family members started singing as well just really threw me off.
I think he's upfront about the fact he was on a lot of drugs during the 70s. So I think that's where they get away with it, sort of zooming around the timeline, is that you get the impression he can't really remember. He's got fractured bits of memory, and it all seems a bit surreal to him, and like a bit he doesn't quite know where he is. I think there's a bit where he falls asleep and then wakes up in a hotel room or something. I might have got that from another film, but you think that's probably what it was. I mean, Amy Winehouse, apparently that did happen to her. She would pass out and they just stick her on a plane and get her to the next gig that she had to go, because she's like their cash cow, you know. And I think that comes out in some of these biopics as well, that when you're sort of providing a lot of money to people put the financial interests ahead of your health, you know. So particularly in the 80s, there's a lot of these people like Whitney Houston and things where people were just wanting them to keep singing whatever the cost, because that brings in the money. And actually maybe someone, if they'd have been better off if someone said to them, actually, do you know what you really need is like a holiday, a little bit of a break, take some time out and then get back to it. And actually, when you think Elton John's life could have gone very differently, he could have actually not recovered from this. You know, it looked like it could have gone that way. It could have been a much safer film, and I thought it was going to be. So I think I was taken by surprise by how daring it was.
So Mark's got La Bamba behind him.
Yeah, I do.
Oh, yeah,
Is that a clue? What
What
are we going to talk about?
Yeah, I quite liked it. I thought it was all right, La Bamba. I hadn't really seen it or heard of it. Lou Diamond Phillips plays the lead role. And yeah, it's not bad. I felt it was a bit dated. I don't know if had you seen it before, Andrew, before this, or?
Well, it's funny you asked that, because I never really watched it, but I remember when it came out, it was kind of like a big thing, and it was kind of Lou Diamond Phillips' kind of breakthrough role, and you also had actual musicians playing their like 50s counterparts, like Marshall Crenshaw playing Buddy Holly, or Brian Setzer playing Eddie Cochran, I think, Summertime Blues. So there was a lot of big deal with that, the idea of, you know, the then modern day musicians playing musicians from the past. And so, it kind of introduced a new generation to Richie Valens. So I thought that was an interesting aspect, because people don't often think about him, except, you know, they reminded him that he died in the same plane crash as Buddy Holly, Big Bopper, the day the music died. So.
And Mark's too young to remember this. I don't know if it was the same in the States, Andrew, but in the UK, the cover of La Bamba by Los Lobos was #1 for about 5 weeks in 1987. It was like it was
very popular.
Oh no,
yeah,
I'm not too young.
Hit.
I remember that, James.
You do remember that?
I was 7.
Yeah, like I said, it introduced a new generation to this music. I mean, people didn't necessarily remember Richie Valens because he died so young. He was like 17. It's sort of like, you know, what would happen.
That's all right. Yeah, so we're the same age, Mark, but I've obviously aged a lot worse.
No, it's only from the faces. They're the thing that's kept youthful. Everything.
I'm not as annoyed as Los Lobos, who must be really annoyed that it's their biggest hit is the cover of the Richie Valens song they did.
Yeah.
Well, they appear in the movie. Los Lobos.
Oh, do they? Oh, cool.
Well, they played the song, like sort of like a folksy version of the song.
That has given me a great a great segue, Andrew, talking about so this other film I watched called Telstar, where it's about Joe Meek, who predicted Buddy Holly's death. And he was a producer who founded, I believe, the record label Telstar. But it's quite tragic. It's, again, based on a real story. My sister lived in the place next door to where all this happened in the 60s. So it was happening in sort of Holloway kind of area. And yeah, he set up a record label, and he turned down many like opportunities to work with the Beatles and work with Tom Jones, kind of not really choosing to work with them. And he actually was going more and more crazy towards the end of his record label, the work with his record label. I mean, he was turning a gun on, you know, people he was working with. I think Chaz and Dave, one of the members, Chaz and Dave, one of the people who worked with. That was quite good. That was quite a good film on Amazon Prime. But
can I just say on that one, do you think that he really strikes you, doesn't he? Like this perfectionist sounding
definitely
in the day with all the old school, you know, slow tape and everything. And that kind of like half of that perfectionism plus his own mental health being a little bit, you know, suspect to start with, is kind of did this spiral, doesn't he, of decline?
Yeah. I mean, so that was a fairly good film. But the one that I probably enjoyed the most out of the three that I watched was called Music of Silence, again on Amazon Prime, which is about Andrea Bocelli, like the opera. Yeah, and that's really good. So
Music of Silence.
Music of Silence is called, Susanna. Yeah, and it's basically the story of Andrea Bocelli, how he goes blind when he's quite young and sort of learns to love music, and how he ends up, you know, sort of working alongside Pavarotti towards the end of the film. His career is sort of going on to Pavarotti. But yeah, this was my favorite out of the three films. This was really good. Yeah, really enjoyable film. That's my selection. So I will pass it over to maybe sort of like CJ.
I didn't have much time to watch too many, but I did manage to catch Walk the Line, the Johnny Cash film that was mentioned. That was really good. I'm not a major Johnny Cash fan, but I think the fact that I liked it shows that it is actually a really good film. I think with some musical biographies, I think being a fan really helps. At least maybe just gives you a 1 point increase in your rating. But yeah, Johnny Cash, Walk the Line, I really liked it. I kind of have noticed the template with some of these music biographies where they have a tough childhood during their teenage years. They kind of develop their skills and almost become a musical prodigy. They get discovered, they release records, they become rich and famous. They get addicted, and then they reach kind of rock bottom, and then they get over their addiction and they have like a comeback with either a new look or a new sound. I've kind of noticed that some of the films do have that template. Even Ray, the Jamie Foxx picture, which I really like. I think it's probably my favorite of the autobiography films I've seen. Mainly just because I like Ray's music, and I do like the way the film is shot and the way the story is told, even though it does kind of follow that same template. I think one of the films which I watched just a while ago, which breaks the template of that kind of telling the whole story of the artist, his childhood to success, is Love and Mercy. It's about the frontman of the Beach Boys, Brian Wilson. I don't think you have to be a fan of the Beach Boys to like it, but the thing I liked about this film is that it's kind of set in just two periods, the 1960s and then also I think the 1980s. So it's these two periods of his life, and the film kind of bounces back between those two points. So the 1960s is kind of just him about him recording an album, I think it's Pet Sounds. And then the 1980s is kind of him dealing with, I guess, kind of him later in life, and then him trying to find love and him meeting this woman and starting a relationship with her. And I kind of like how the film essentially just broke the mold. You know, it didn't start from childhood and then being discovered and then having to deal with addiction and all this stuff. It is literally just focusing on one guy. Oh, I also saw Notorious, the autobiography about Notorious B.I.G. It was okay. I mean, I like Notorious B.I.G. as a rapper, but I think the actor who played him was pretty good. He was like okay, although his rapping wasn't at the same level as like Notorious B.I.G. I just think it kind of felt like a bootleg version of it, like a poor man's version of Notorious B.I.G. But overall, I thought the film was okay. I wouldn't recommend it, but if you're a big fan of Notorious B.I.G. and you like his music, yeah, so you can watch it.
Quick question, CJ. James was mentioning in the comments actually that Notorious B.I.G. is better than Straight Outta Compton. What do you think?
Ooh, I think Straight Outta Compton is way better because I remember watching Straight Outta Compton and actually concentrated and thought like this is actually okay to like kind of follow along. Whereas Notorious B.I.G. kind of at times I kind of felt like, oh, why is this here? What am I doing? Watching this film, and then like another Biggie song would come on. It's like, oh yeah, now I remember why I watched this film.
James, you want to make a comment about this?
Well, I haven't rewatched them recently. Maybe I should watch them back to back. What I do, and I really like both films. I think Jamal Woolard is the guy who plays Notorious B.I.G. And again, back to the miming thing. You're right, CJ. He's not as good as Biggie, but I like the fact that he gave it a go of actually doing the material himself and doing it live. And maybe I'm being a bit nitpicky, but one thing that really grates on me in Straight Outta Compton and even 24-Hour Party People, which I rewatched last week, is when they're miming on stage to studio tracks. Because when you go and see a band live or see anyone live, it never sounds like the studio track. You can tell it's live. And again, it just throws me out of the film a little bit. So I really like the fact in that they do that. I think it's more focused on him because it's just one character rather than the problems they've got in Straight Outta Compton of following multiple people. The one thing I will say about Notorious as well, though, the casting is brilliant. Everyone is all the actors I think are really good. Angela Bassett actually plays his mum. Obviously, we were talking about her in the Tina Turner biopic earlier. But the person who plays Little Kim looks really like Little Kim. Everyone's really good.
Yeah, you're right. The casting on Notorious is really good. Like Lil Kim, Faith Evans, even just Biggie himself. And but then at first, because they walked into the office and then you see Puff Daddy P Diddy whatever in the office, and I'm thinking, wait, who's this guy? And then he's like, you find out, oh, it's Puff Daddy. It's like, what? No, it doesn't.
And actually, everybody else, if you know that story, you're kind of immediately you go, I don't even need to know who that is because I can tell just from what they look like.
Okay. Let's try to talk to someone else. Ross, what are your recommendations?
Today, I watched Get On Up, which is the James Brown biopic starring Chadwick Boseman, which I thought was really good. Although I think it's something that I'll need to rewatch and pay a bit more attention to because the non-linear narrative of the story can get a bit confusing. Like with a lot of like things that jump around in time, they tend to pick like 3, maybe 4 time periods to focus on. Whereas this, I think there's like 6 or 7 time periods that they just jump from one to the next. And basically, in some cases, the only way you know which time period you're in is because of his hair. His hair is slightly different. Yeah. Otherwise, it's really difficult to sort of keep on track with where we are in the story. But
yeah, I saw that as well. Yeah, I saw it as well. Get On Up, and yeah, it's weird because it starts in the 80s and then it jumps to the 1920s and then it jumps to 1960 and 1980 and 1950 and then
70s and the 50s and
then and it was really just jarring just to see him like kind of jump around. And it does make it really tough to kind of focus and like what is going on here.
The performance was amazing. I mean,
it's brilliant.
It's so amazing that it's actually sometimes difficult to understand what he's saying because he's got James Brown's voice down so brilliantly, and James Brown has a very unique voice that sometimes I was a bit like, what? And I had to kind of rewind it a little bit because I couldn't quite hear what he was saying. But the performance is sensational. I think. I mean, they obviously used the structure of the film for a particular purpose because it was him telling his story, but as an older man when he's not quite mentally all there. And so he's sort of jumping from story to story, and so it serves the narrative. But I think as a biopic, it probably would have worked a bit better as a more linear story.
Let's try to talk to Jeanne.
I don't know if anyone mentioned United States versus Billie Holiday.
Oh yeah, that was a great film.
I've watched it this week.
But yeah, I saw that earlier this year. It was nominated for some awards, especially for Andrea Day's portrayal of Billie Holiday. And I feel like that's kind of the best part of the film. The film itself isn't perfect. I feel like the way that it's told, and we've talked a lot about like the structure of a lot of these musical biopics being quite predictable. I would say the only departure is the fact that Billie Holiday's story doesn't have a happy ending, and the film doesn't shy away from that. It portrays that in quite a really sad way. But at the same time, it doesn't dehumanize her, and it doesn't like make her look like an undignified character, because she was plagued by this investigation by the FBI into like their movement towards, drugs and going in on drug culture and all of that. And this was all a facade to basically take her down because of her song Strange Fruit, which was this really powerful anthem about what was happening in the South at that time, and how Black people in America were being treated and lynched and treated horribly, especially in the South of the US. And so she sang this song, and oftentimes she was singing it to quite influential white audiences who like enjoyed her other music. But the authorities didn't like that because it was spreading this kind of message about truth, about what was really going on. And what they wanted was someone who was like a figurehead for propaganda and a distraction, and, someone who could stand in and say, look, like there's this woman of color who's really popular and really successful, and she's singing songs, like she's palatable, basically. And when she started doing something that was less palatable, that's when it became an issue. And so, yeah, unfortunately, she fell down the path that we've spoken about a lot when it comes to musicians and people who are really successful in this industry. But like I said, the ending is truthful to that and respects that, but at the same time, she has this kind of standoff with the officer, and I feel like it allowed her to have this very dignified ending. But I do feel like ultimately the best part of that film is Andrea Day's portrayal of Billie Holiday. That scene where she's singing Strange Fruit is like chilling. It's like, it's just otherworldly. Like she sang it so many times at this point during like the campaign for the awards. But that scene where she's singing it is just absolutely extraordinary. She manages to capture the feeling of Billie Holiday's voice without like mimicking it exactly, because it's like, impossible to do. And again, it goes back to what we were saying about a lot of these people trying to portray characters who you have footage of. In this case with Billie Holiday, she was earlier on in the 20th century, so there isn't a ton of footage of her. But I feel like Andrea Day is able to capture her really, really well, and also introduce me to the musician, the singer herself really well, because I'm not familiar with Billie Holiday and her music. I wasn't familiar with, the extraordinary accomplishments that she had. And I feel like this film does a good job of introducing me to all of that. And that's kind of the case for a lot of these films. Like I know some of you guys were talking about how you grew up with Queen and Elton John and all of that. I didn't. So a lot of these films are just introductions to me. Sorry, my table's squeaking. A lot of these films are introductions to me, and I feel like they do a good job of introducing us to the musicians, giving us a quick rundown of their story. But I like films like Rocketman and Bohemian Rhapsody, especially Rocketman though, because they recognize that it's a film, that it's entertainment, and they just bring it. Like if you're watching a documentary, you're watching a documentary. But if you're watching a film about like an exciting musician, a character, someone who like redefined pop culture. I want to see some of that in the film. And I feel like Rocketman captures that brilliantly. I feel like aspects of Bohemian Rhapsody, especially the stuff that focuses in on Freddie Mercury, captures that really, really well. And actually, the two films were directed by Dexter Fletcher, which is interesting. And because of the whole Bryan Singer situation, he left the project. So Dexter Fletcher was actually involved in both films. But I feel like because he was able to do Rocketman from the beginning, it has that sort of flavor to it throughout, and is more consistent. Whereas Bohemian Rhapsody, like we've already talked about, has some issues. But yeah, I feel like that's what I expect from musical biopics. Just give me a flavor of the musician, give me a rundown of their story. If you can do it in a more interesting way, that's great. If not, then at least give me just razzle dazzle. At least give me, you know, like a sample of what they were about, and really just inject that energy to make it a fun and memorable cinematic experience. Because otherwise I would just watch a documentary, or I would read an article on like Wikipedia.
There is a Billie Holiday documentary that came out a couple of years ago just called Billie. Which I'm sure lots of Billie Eilish fans are downloading accidentally and then going, this is what I wanted. But I really wanted to watch that after watching United States versus Billie Holiday. It's interesting that they hold that Strange Fruit song back, actually, because even if you know the song, you suddenly, at the point that she sings it, you go, oh yeah, there's been all this fuss about this song. And then to sort of put it right, it's almost to the middle or towards the end.
Yeah.
That you just see it. It's like, this is what we've been talking about, and it seems like this amazing bit. And I was going to say, on watching it twice, I agree. Like, obviously, it's a sort of a horrible ending. And then when I watched it the second time, I was really struck. I actually almost had the reverse reaction, which is she has a bit of a defiant speech at the end.
Yeah.
And I kind of felt the other way, actually, when I watched it, even though obviously, she died far too young and what happened to her was horrible. But I was like, I suddenly really connected with what she said at the end as like, that's, that's like two fingers up to those guys. It's worth noting that Diana Ross played Billie Holiday apparently in Lady Sings the Blues in 1972. I can't find this film anywhere, and by all accounts, Diana Ross is very good in it, but it's not a good movie, seems to be the consensus. But I'd be interested to see that after watching United States versus Billie Holiday, and I'd certainly be interested to watch the documentary.
I think it's interesting that now we've got several examples of these musical biopics where the portrayal of the main character is like excellent, but the film around it isn't necessarily the best. I think it just shows how difficult it is to write a film around these musicians and try to like conjure up a new plot that makes it interesting and new.
I think the problem is actually not only musical biopics, but it's biopics in general. I think it's something that I was trying to mention a few weeks ago. It's a personal opinion again, but not everyone is interesting enough to get a movie about him or her. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In my opinion, people became famous in different parts of the world for different reasons, arts or whatever. But if you make a movie about every single one of them, I'm not sure that every time actually it would be fascinating to watch, to be honest.
So on that note, thank you to my co-host Richard, and thank you to all our attendees today, and thank you to listening to the filmandtvreview.com podcast. Until next time, goodbye.
We hope you enjoyed this film and TVreview.com episode. Catch the latest film and TV reviews, together with regular episode content from the world of film and TV every week. See you soon. Would you like to reach our film and TV review podcast audience? Do you have a product or service of interest to film and TV home consumers or followers of the entertainment industry? Have a film or show production to publicize? For affordable price plans for all budgets, get in touch and find out about our introductory advertising options. Reach our audience of film and TV viewers and visit our site contact page at filmandtvreview.com, or you can email us at business@filmandtvreview.com. Reach out today.